So I'm looking for low price subnets that have been doing work. Hey, this is Travis. I've been asked a lot about how to use TAOFlute properly. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to use TAOFlute, and then at the end, we're going to look for some gems together. So first, each row is a different subnet, and then you've got links here to their website, their GitHub, and their X account if it exists. And then we've got the flags here. So if you hover over the eye here, it tells you hover over an icon for more information. So I'm going to go over all of the current flags, and just so you know, there will be more added consistently. So for the first one here, it's a little bit complicated. What it means is that if this first flag is red or yellow, that means that one miner has over 50% of the emissions for the subnet, indicating some sort of centralized emissions for the subnet. Now, that doesn't always mean that it's a bad thing. For instance, if we go here and we look and we find Ridges has a miner that is getting all of their emissions, and that's completely okay because they have publicly said their subnet is a winner-takes-all subnet. But on some other subnets, it could mean that miner has somehow gamed the system, or the subnet owner has a treasury or something like that. Again, that might be okay as long as it's publicized. So my suggestion with this flag is if it's yellow or red, just understand why it's yellow or red for the subnet, as that'll give you a bit deeper understanding. And if you cannot find out why, then I would treat it as potentially a bad thing. And to find out, obviously, you just go to the Bittensor Discord and ask in that particular subnet's channel. The next flag here is the 100% miner burn flag here. If the subnet is exactly 100% miner burn, then this will turn red. This means that the subnet is likely not producing anything, as no miners are getting paid, at least through emissions. I have seen some subnets where they turn on and off the 100% miner burn as they deploy things. They're trying to conserve their emissions, and maybe that's a good thing. But if your subnet has been at 100% miner burn for quite a while, it means they're not producing anything. And again, I would be asking in the subnet's Discord channel. The next one here is the number of miners receiving emissions. As we scroll up here, you can see there's a few of them here where there are 0 miners receiving emissions for the subnet, indicating that no miners are being paid and therefore miners are not producing anything. So again, you'd be asking in the Discord channel why that is. The next one here is how many code lines the subnet owner has produced in the last 30 days. If it's 0, then the flag here is going to turn red, or if they don't have a GitHub, the flag is going to be red. It's not always a bad thing. Some subnet owners have multiple repositories that they're in charge of. This one in particular that we're tracking with TAOFlute is just for this subnet. Some subnet owners have multiple repos where maybe they've got an app that they're developing. Well, that's not going to be tracked within TAOFlute. So again, this red flag doesn't mean everything. It just means right now they haven't produced much as far as the subnet's code, but maybe they've produced a whole bunch on their app. Again, you'd have to look a little bit deeper on your own to determine that. The next one here is Discord activity. So this one in particular, it's been over 30 days. Has it? No, it hasn't. Okay, so I've gone to their Discord here and found that Checker Chain hasn't been deregistered, but it was sold. So a lot of the metrics that we've got for Checker Chain are just going to be kind of empty because of the new ownership, I guess, on that subnet. So yeah, there's no subnet activity yet. And then the X here is the X activity recently in the last 30 days. So if a subnet has had X activity on their X account in the last 30 days, it won't be red. Otherwise, it will be red. And then, of course, this last column in the flags here is the deregistration number. So number 1 means it's very likely to be the next deregistered subnet, the next time a new subnet is registered. So yeah, those are the current flags. If you have ideas for more flags, I'd love to hear them in the comments. Right now, the sorting is a bit weird. It's just doing it based on the deregistration number. And then, of course, we have price and the last 30 days of price history here. And then we have the number of code lines in the biggest commit in the last 14 days here. So if we sort this column, you can see here that Synth did 44,000 lines in one commit in the last 14 days. So they've been just slamming out code. Basilica as well. Crazy, these two. And then we've got the average number of code lines per day on this next column here. So Basilica clearly leading the way with Liam and Utopia following behind. Now this graph is a representation of these numbers here. So this biggest commit here is the tallest line in the last 14 days. So I guess it would be this one right here. And then the average lines is the average over the last 30 days. Each of these lines on the graph here represents the number of lines committed each day, and it's relative here. Now, sorting this column is a little bit odd. I wanted to see the teams that had been committing the most recently. So if we sort this upwards here, then these subnets here are the ones that have committed in like the last day or so, right? So if you grab the very top one, shoots here, they made a commit 2 hours ago. So when this is pointing up, this is showing the subnets that are really actively developing their subnets right now. And then there's the Discord columns here. This is the number of days since the last team member message in each of the Discords. So it's been 0 days since the last time a team member sent a message on Discord, and you can see here it's actually John Durbin sent a message today. Now, some of these columns, like these Discord ones here, are not available on the public TAOFlute. So if you're really hardcore, you can join the Bittensor Alpha group and get access to a lot more than is visible publicly. The link to that is in the description. But if you're not as hardcore, but you still want to get access to some of this data, you can still get it from the flags here. So if I hover over the Discord flag here, you can see it's 0 days since the last Discord team message. So you still get access to quite a lot of data here without joining the group. The next column here is the number of days since the last X message. And then we have the miner burn percentage here. Again, that's on this flag here. And then we have the number of miners that are actually receiving emissions in the subnet by cold key, which I think is a bit more accurate than UID. And then we have these columns here, which all four of them give me a lot of information about the subnet owner's wallet and what they're doing with the funds on that subnet owner wallet. So if I want to see which subnet owner has staked the most into their subnet recently, I can sort by this subnet owner alpha staking column here. Nova has unstaked the most, but Liam has staked the most to their subnet. And if you do a bit more digging, you can see they're actually staking and burning. And then there's this graph here. Once you've kind of parsed it and gotten your head around how it works, it actually gives you a really good overview of what exactly the subnet owner has been doing with their wallet, whether they've been taking out. You can see here, we've got lots of little dots here, these yellow dots. Those are all transfers into the wallet. And then there's pink ones that are kind of not visible on this one. You can see them more on this one that are showing the staking as well. So yeah, just by looking at these last few columns, I have a really clear idea of what's happened with Liam, for instance. They transferred out of their wallet almost 30,000 TAO worth of alpha, and they've been staking and burning this amount of TAO over the last month. You can see Better Therapy, the next one down here. They have transferred out 60 TAO, but they've also staked 60 TAO, and they've deposited 35 TAO into their wallet in the last 30 days as well. And you can kind of glean from this graph here when that happened. Again, this is kind of for more hardcore investors, so it's not on the public TAOFlute dashboard. If you want to get access to all this, you got to join the Bittensor Alpha group. And then the last thing here we have is the liquidation haircut column. I had this in two different columns at first, and then I realized it was just taking up too much real estate on the screen. And so I've just hidden it for the subnets that are not the top 10 to be deregistered here. So again, how this works is that once a subnet is deregistered, say Eastworld is deregistered here, the holders of subnet 94 here, they will get back all the TAO in the subnet pool. That'll be distributed amongst the holders. And once all the math is complete of that distribution, the holders can expect to get, you can see here the liquidation price when I hover 0.0018 TAO for each of their alpha, whereas the price right now is 0.00181. So they would lose 1%, say. But FlameWire, for instance, here, you would actually gain 1%. That liquidation price is above the current price. And then one key thing that I really wanted to make super simple is just verifying all the information. So we've got obviously the links to the website, the GitHub, the X account here, and then we've got links. I'm going to add more links to these flags, but if you look over at the first one, say, so I want to look at TensorProx, why do they have this UID where 100% of their emissions are going there? Well, it's actually a link, and I can go here and look here, and they have the incentive of 1 here. So that's like all the incentive for this subnet is going to this one UID. So I've now like confirmed through TAO stats that indeed there's only one miner getting emissions on the subnet. Again, if I want to look at a graph of the price or whatever, these links here, they go to just the TAO stats graph here. And then there's a link for the biggest commit. So if I actually want to go and read the code, just have to click on that link to find the biggest commit in the last 14 days. Then I can just go and read through the code. So it's really good for like finding subnets that have made big changes recently, and maybe they deserve a bit more investment because of that. So it just helps you kind of find exactly what you want to find. The average lines and the lines per day here, they both just link to the subnet's GitHub. the last X message here, again, that just goes straight to the last X message for the subnet. And then the number of miners, again, that link will go straight to the metagraph on TAOStats, and then you can actually verify the number of miners that are receiving emissions by looking for this miner icon here, and then scrolling over and just checking that they are actually receiving daily TAO. So I could count all these up, and it should match 23 miners here. And then, of course, the same for the subnet owner wallet. You click on one of these, it's going to bring you to the wallet. So for Bittensor Alpha Group members, we have a little bit more info here. If you click on the ID column here, you go and see the subnets drill down, and then you can see the line in the overview here, and just a little bit more detail about, what the subnet owner is doing, or TAO flows, or miner burn over time, a little bit on the X activity. And then we've got hidden links here. So these are links that are not set on chain. So these are ones that we've scraped and found. So it just helps a little bit with subnet research when you're trying to find websites with more information about your subnet. You might be able to find some links that we've scraped. There's also some news stuff here. So when there's been a cold key change or a name change. So 86 recently was just renamed. I think they were deregistered. And so there's some news about the subnet there. And then in addition to the overview here and the drill down, I've just got some other things that I've been tracking that are interesting to me that I just haven't seen anywhere else. So I was like, fine, we'll just build them. So we've got a tracker here. This shows some users of interest and where they have been posting. So this one in particular is Const. You can see these are the channels that he's been posting in the most. Affine, obviously his subnet. So he's been posting there a lot, but you can see the other places that he's been posting. So he's hyped for subnet 8 right now, and been asking questions in other subnets as well. And then there's the market data here. TAO.app, TAOStats, BAGBot, they all haven't made some of the graphs that I've wanted to see. So I just built them myself here. In particular, stuff like the bottom 15 subnets, I'm always watching those very closely. And then the average and median and lowest price subnets, those are super important to me when investing. And unfortunately, all we have gotten is average so far from the other websites. So I just went ahead and grabbed the data myself and figured it out. So let's go through a completely unplanned and unscripted example of how I might look for a subnet. So I'm going to look for subnets that have recently made changes. So sorting by this lines per day. And I'm going to look for subnets that have a relatively low price. So I'm looking for low price subnets that have been doing work. So this BAGBot one is actually really low. It does have a red flag for 100% of all emissions are going to one miner UID. I don't actually know why that is. It could be a winner takes all. I think before investing in this subnet, I would want to know why that is. So looking at the graph, it has done a few of these drops, pumps, and then now it's kind of dropped again. So, you could see another pump up here at some point. So historically, it doesn't look like a bad place to invest now. From these flags here, you can see that it's been 0 days since the last Discord message, or if you're a member, you can just see that here, and the activity. And the activity here has been pretty steady. Again, these graphs are relative to one another. So all these tiny little bumps here are the subnet owner or their team member sending messages. So they've been pretty active. They've been making a lot of GitHub changes recently. Some of them are rather large. If I look at the subnet owner's wallet here, I can see that they did transfer 65 TAO worth of their alpha token to another wallet. So I don't know what that is. Maybe I would click here. I can see these transfers here on that day. I might go and look at the other wallets here just to check what's going on. One of them seems to be a wallet here where they're holding about 200 TAO worth of their alpha token. And the other one here seems to be like a trading wallet or something like that for $1 million. So yeah, I didn't see anything nefarious about what the subnet owner is doing there. So personally, I will be keeping an eye on BAGBot at this point. Maybe I'll ask the subnet owner why there's only one UID getting emissions. If they have a good answer, like say it's winner takes all, then the subnet seems pretty solid. If I sort by price here, the lowest price right now is 0.00181, and BAGBot is down here at 0.00199. So it has the possibility of getting deregistered soon. but it's more than, say, 20 deregistrations away right now, at least. So it's not a huge concern for this subnet. Let's just take a closer look at their GitHub. Right, so it's doing something about predictive translations. So this is when you translate from one language to another and the order of the words doesn't line up the same as in English or German or Spanish. Like the ordering of words in a sentence is just grammatically different between languages. And because of that, when you're translating from one language to another, the order of the words doesn't always match up. And so if you can predict the next sound or the next word that's going to happen in the sentence, you can be closer to real time when you're doing a translation. And I think that's what BAGBot is all about, is just getting really close to real time translations. The other thing I would do here is look at their X. And then one tip here is if you don't see an X account here, you can't find it, like say FlameWire, we would go up here and we would search for hashtag subnet97 and see if you can find it here. If you search on latest, sometimes you can see that people have kind of done that link for you. So in this case, this must be FlameWire. So yeah, I'd be reasonably interested in BAGBot, especially at this price. There's only the one red flag that I would look into before investing. And if you notice all of these subnets here with lower prices, there's very few of them with no red flags. They're just safe scan, and BAGBot only has one. So it's pretty awesome relative to the others in the same price range. And that's another way that I like to look for subnets, is just based on price ascending here, and just kind of scroll down and look for subnets with very few red flags and see if I can justify them to myself. For some of them, I would skip over them, like, the ones that don't have any miners mining. Another thing I like to look for is subnets where the price has descended a lot in the last month here. So this distributed trading one. Oh, it looks like they've popped up in the last day or so here, but change this to the daily candles. And yeah, you can see that it's fallen quite a bit. 72% since September, and say 15% or so in the last month. And so that decline in price could be for many reasons, but my preference is to use the data on TAOFlute to see if there's any real reason for a decline in price. Like subnet 38 here, they have been making code changes. Let's take a look at their biggest commit in the last 15 days, 14 days. Yeah, so it looks like they've changed a little bit how they're rewarding miners, which may be a good thing. And then I would just manually go into the Discord, especially if I'm considering investing in a particular subnet, just to really get a feeling of the sentiment that miners have, say. So yeah, their Discord is extremely active. A lot of miners with questions, potentially problems and whatnot. But for a subnet with this low of price to have a lot of activity on their Discord is quite surprising, and potentially a good thing. So I'm not going to recommend that you invest in distributed trading or BAGBot, because I'm sure by the time this video is edited and put out, it will have been a few days. Prices will have shifted. Market conditions will be completely different. But I just wanted to show you how I would look for deals on subnets, subnets that are undervalued, have a lower price than maybe they should. And one of the comments that I get a lot is that everyone's staring at the top price subnets here, right? Shoots, Liam, Affine, Ridges, Targon, subnet 8. Everybody's staring at these and everybody's investing in them. And that's great, because I think they are probably the top subnets right now as far as the value that they're bringing to Bittensor. But there's 128 subnets. And if you're only staring at the top 8, you're missing 120 subnets. And I think our job as stakers is to help identify the subnets that are underpriced, that should get more emissions to their miners and to their subnet owners because they are doing a good job. My opinion is that that is our purpose within the ecosystem, is to help identify the subnets that are currently undervalued, and conversely get out of subnets that are overvalued. So I think a lot of these subnets here that are kind of blue chip subnets, people know what they are. They're really looking into them, and that's awesome because they're doing something good. Many of them are. But if you scroll down to say halfway through the page here, this is the median price, right? Halfway through, somewhere like 0.003, 0.004. Half of the subnets are below this. So the way that I think about this is that half of the subnets right now are undervalued, meaning that there's profit in it for you for identifying those ones and investing in them and pushing their price up. A good example of that was Bittrex here, actually. You know, Bittrex is a recommendation engine. Basically what they do is they reward miners for helping refer or get customers to businesses, which could certainly be very valuable. And you can see over the last 10 days or so, it's done about 100x. Considering there's no red flags at all on the subnet right now, that they are active on X, they're active on Discord, they're putting through some code changes at the very least. You know, I think this was one that was undervalued and, you know, I had invested in it down here. And that investment was a lot of due diligence on my part, you know, going and looking at the website, looking at the Discord and whatnot. But of course, TAOFlute really helped me identify Bittrex as one of the ones that I should spend my time looking at, as opposed to if I sort by price ascending here, like some of these other subnets, like obviously this unknown one, you know, about to be deregistered soon, lots of red flags, probably wouldn't spend any of my time researching that. And I wouldn't spend too much time researching many of these subnets that are about to be deregistered next, unless of course I could stand to profit from their liquidation haircut. And if you're one of those guys that's like, hey, you know, I'd like to get involved and buy some of these lower price subnets, but you know, the liquidity isn't there, you know, I can't go in heavy into any of these low price subnets. If you join the Bittensor Alpha group, I'll help you get set up with BAGBot, which is the bot that I use for DCAing in and out of subnets. There's no slippage or MEVBot issues, and so you can get a rather large position on all these lower price subnets using the BAGBot. Now, I really hope this has been helpful. You know, the goal with TAOFlute is just to help everyone get a really good feel for the market and have data to back up their convictions and not even have to rely on TAOFlute per se. Like I say, a lot of these numbers are links where you can actually just go and check for yourself. You don't even have to rely on the data on TAOFlute. And if you have any suggestions on columns that you would like to see, please let me know in the comments. I try to add only valuable information as columns here. I don't want to have stuff like market cap or volume or fully diluted value or any of this junk here. Like a lot of this is kind of useless to have. I just want the really important data to compare subnets with one another. Now, I'd also like to stress that TAOFlute is just the starting point for research about a subnet. A subnet having a red flag or 2 or 3 or 5 doesn't mean that it's a bad subnet to invest in. It's just letting you know something right away so you don't have to go and research it in order to find that out. So you could say that TAOFlute is sort of like a compass that points you at certain subnets that might be of interest, but it does not replace due diligence. And just looking at like the flags and the lines per day and all this information that's available here, that's not enough information to go off of to invest in a subnet. I do more personally. TAOFlute just saves me a lot of time and it helps guide me to the subnets that are of interest. Now, if you're interested in joining the Bittensor Alpha group and getting full access to TAOFlute, the link to that is in the description.